Electrocast.
There's a change happening in the way we live, the way we work, the way we spend our money and make our decisions. We are evolving to be more conscious in our actions in a way that serves the world and makes it a better place. Welcome to the Ethical Evolution. The Ethical Evolution podcast is brought to you by Ethical Change Agency. I'm Bindi, I'm the founder, and my mission is to help ethical entrepreneurs and holistic healers to find their voice through spiritual coaching and podcasting. I'm honoured to bring you the stories of those who create change through healing, kindness, innovation, purpose, and spirit. Understanding that to create collective change, we need to be the change. It all begins with us. Audrey Hope is an award-winning certified addiction and trauma counsellor. She holds a Master of Divinity and Metaphysics as well as a Resident Addiction Specialist certification. Audrey uses her abilities as a clairvoyant psychic medium to heal patients from trauma, from abusive relationships, domestic violence, and more. Additionally, you may recognise Audrey from the internationally acclaimed reality show Rehab, which brought 8 celebrities from the UK to the United States for addiction and trauma treatment. Throughout 2 decades in her field, Audrey has worked with an abundance of celebrities, producers, CEOs, doctors, lawyers, authors, athletes, heirs, and more, helping them cope with their relationship and or addiction problems. Audrey aims to heal all problems, whether they be surrounding one's relationship, addiction, or trauma, from the deep level of the soul. 5 minutes with Audrey and you'll soon see why she's a force to be reckoned with. The energy we exchanged was electric, so I hope you also pick up on this through our conversation. Welcome, Audrey, to the Ethical Evolution.
Wonderful to be here.
Now, Audrey, for those people who don't know who you are, can you go ahead and tell us?
Okay, that will take the whole show, if you don't mind. Well, now I'm a spiritual counselor, a soul healer, and I work on issues that go beyond the rational mind into the deep level of the soul. And I also help with relationships, trauma, anybody that wants to manifest their dreams and to find out their blocks, but from a very deep place so that it doesn't repeat and happen all over again. So you don't meet the same partner over again. Kind of go in there and stop the pattern.
Yeah. Now, I was just checking out some of your YouTube videos, and I think anybody who watches those would want to work with you in a heartbeat, really, because the work that you do is incredible. Now, let's just break some of it down. So, with people with addiction, of which there are many nowadays, everybody's struggling with something, whether it be some trauma or something deeper that they don't even know. What do you do with people who come to you and go, look, let's say I can't stop drinking. Like, help me. What do I do?
I am excited that I could add to the pie of healing. And when I started, I realized there was a missing piece. There was a missing piece that was so revolutionary and so transformational. And that was going deeper to the level of the soul and why you're really having these problems from a higher perspective. This was so fascinating to me because I realized there were so many people who didn't want to hear about AA and NA and the same stuff. They wanted to find a new reason and a new way of being. And the spiritual soul piece has been that because, I always say that when you're on your knees, you begin to look up, right? And you get to the gate. When you have a problem or you're traumatized or you're addicted, you're on your knees, you're at the gate. Well, guess what? There's the door. You're this close to transforming. So I found this community of addicts and people who are really suffering on a deep level a way in to fast transformation. And it has been so incredible to see caterpillar to butterfly. And it's like, so changing, transforming, and not having that same identity. I'm an addict, and all that. Just moving into, well, who are you without your story? And that has been so exciting to help people find hope and transformation quickly.
And that's interesting. You mentioned things like AA and NA and things like that. There's so many people that I talk to that go, you know what, it just doesn't feel like it fits me, because they have those elements of God in it and they don't believe in God and all this kind of thing. And they want something that is unique for them. And this is exactly what you do, isn't it?
Yes. I also believe that you should go because there's community there. You get to handle the chemical piece. It's free. There's support, and it's wonderful. And people who do go, can make it also easier and faster because you're admitting that you have a problem every day and you're working on it. So that's wonderful to handle the chemical piece, because all the therapy in the world, there's still that piece. Oh, I really like a drink because it feels good. And you got to take care of that chemical piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you actually do in your sessions with someone when you are trying to get them to get to that core of their soul and actually unearth what's actually the root of the root that you like to call it?
Right, the root of the root. Well, I think that I describe it as there's like no system. It's just like you sit with someone and I kind of get a read, like a computer, and they talk and how are you? And all of a sudden I'll start to see, like it comes up on a computer screen, what's really going on. You may think it's this, but it starts to, I think it's a voice or a tapping in to a higher force, or because I've trained in this for so long and because I'm really sincere in it, I really want to do it. I kind of get a read on what it is. And sometimes it's fascinating what comes up. I once had this woman who had such bad luck. I mean, everything bad that can happen to a person has happened to her. She was so young. She couldn't understand, right? Well, that's something strange, right? And as we looked in, I started to see she had a grandmother on the other side, and her grandmother taught her black magic.
Wow.
As a young girl. And that was karmically backfiring on her. And unless we got that piece, I don't know how many rehabs she would have to go to clear it. So sometimes it is a soul contract or a curse or a karmic issue. And you got to go in and get that, or you'll just be lost in the dark.
And this is another element of what you do, because you actually are also a psychic medium, and you can connect with the other side, and you can also work out, the information around karma and soul contracts and that kind of stuff. For those people that are listening and going, what is this woo-woo? Can you explain to us what a soul contract is and how it can impact your life?
Well, we are more than we think we are, right? We are more than this life. I mean, come on, look at the flowers, the trees, the sunlight. Just walk outside. There's got to be more than this, right? So with me, it's kind of tapping into the identity that we are more than this. And so let's say someone comes in and they have an unresolved issue with a father who passed or a mother who passed. I mean, you got to be able to talk to them. Right? I mean, you can use an empty chair and pretend, but if it could really find a way to get like a telephone into that and get that information, that is really something. This is no different than what Divinity did, Einstein did, Edison did. They tapped in. They left the third dimension and tapped in to a higher thing, which they called a hypnagogic dimension, which is in between sleeping and waking. We do this when we sleep. When we sleep, we leave the rational, right? And we go into this kind of fifth dimensional place. So I just do it waking. And I also like to teach people how to do that. But the problem is people don't know that they can. Why? Why are they so earthbound? And not, how are babies born? I mean, there's a magic to that, so it's about opening your mind to really discovering who we are. We are multidimensional light beings. And when people suffer, they'll be open to it.
Yeah. So, Audrey, I'm curious, how did you realize you had these gifts? When did you first realize that you could do this?
Wow, that is a great question. I've always been on a path for my own clearing. I just wanted to be, just the best that I can be and live free. So my quest was always with teachers and always finding new ways. And that was another thing about how I found teachers. So a teacher of mine said, why don't you just surrender and do this experiment? And because I was helping people, I was working in a clothing store, I was an actress, and I was ready for something really, really big and to use these gifts. And he had said, go sit in the room, do what I did, and just wait and just surrender and just see what comes. I really did this experiment. And only answer the phone or answer the door. Okay. And then a friend called me and said, why don't you come with me to Malibu? I moved here from New York and I had to follow the experiment. So I went to Malibu with her and it ended up being a rehab. And before I know it, I was hired. They heard that I did healing. And from then on, I was working with psychiatrists, doctors, and I'm like, oh my God, here I am. But there was a moment and there was a client that I had who was very troubled, very traumatized. And I remember he was a painter and we were in this room and I started to see something happen to him at 5 years old. So I said, that's where your block is. And he had an unconscious, he really did have something, a trauma. I forget what that is. After we finished going through it, he went upstairs into the art room and he did not come out. And he started painting and all these, and it was like unblocked. And I thought, what did I just do? And I knew from that moment that I was really on to something. So I kind of go inside the body and really see where it is, because it's a feeling experience where the trauma is, right? And go in there and kind of remove it, like the game Operation. Remember that game?
Yep.
Go in there and get it. And so I was telling my husband this yesterday. I said, people use spiritual practices to feel good. Yoga, Reiki, I'm all for that, right? But what I'm doing is using these tools to actually transform something. So it's not just yoga for yoga's sake. It's using spiritual fire. It's using the power that we have to transform the imagination, grounding, all these tools that we use in meditation to actually use it to heal.
That's incredible. So when you, for me, I know I can read energy. And so, I can look at someone and I can know exactly what's going on with them. I can read a space as well. And when I first started to realize that it was when I was driving and I was always in the same place and it was right next to a cemetery. And I would get these messages and I was like, what is going on? And so, when you can connect with it and actually embrace it and actually then use it for good, it's so incredible that it just changes your entire life. If you can just trust in it and also use your intuition to know that, this is actually something you need to listen to and take notice of. For you,
yes.
When you have those connections with people, do you actually feel it within you, or how does it work for you?
It's different. Lots of times it's different. But you just made me think of something about this intuition. I love to teach people to do what you're doing. Right? to be able to get answers on their own without having, and to free their critical minds, right? So there is a way to do that. I usually start with animals, the secret of the animals, right? And getting a spirit animal. I find that's a great way. It's very neutral. It doesn't have any religion in it. So, getting people to find their spirit animal and then working with that to get answers. Because if you tap in like you are, you will listen to yourself. Right? And the problem in the world right now, your ethical change agency, how do we get people is we got to bring them back into freedom of self to stop listening to other people and other belief systems and to get into the self. And when we do that one at a time, we'll have a better society, a better world, instead of being brainwashed. We have a problem with brainwashing.
And I think also that the stories we tell ourselves, if we can disconnect from those and that critical self-thinking that we get and actually just listen to something that's higher than us, just quiet everything else.
That's the truth.
Yeah, and listen to the truth. That is where it really lies, right?
Right. Because the trauma is terrible. Trauma's terrible. And if we could survive it, it's a miracle. But the piece that is the healing piece is the part where we left our own power and our own self. And that's what I call a soul retrieval. If you can get back that piece and, stitch yourself back together, then you're good to go. Then the trauma becomes something that happened to you, but then you're back in your body and you say to yourself, I will never give my power away to anyone or anything ever again. And you kind of live by these laws of power. We give our power away to too many people, too many relationships, too many things. And you read energy. So lots of times I'll go around the room and I'll say, who did you give your energy to? And how much is in your body? Only 1%? Not good. And they say, well, my ex-boyfriend, my ex-husband, you got to get that back. Yep. There is an energy piece to healing that has to be embraced.
Absolutely. So, Audrey, I can guess that some of the clients that you've had have had remarkable transformation in their life. Can you give us some examples of those?
Oh, boy. So many. I mean, I work in a rehab for over 20 years. The way they come in, completely hopeless, completely disheveled. And then I remember this one client of mine, I looked at her and she was kind of like, I don't know if your listeners can see what I'm doing, but it was just like, just like a rag doll. And I looked at her and I said, you are the most extraordinary person. And she said, you're crazy. Look at me. I said, no, it's the light in your eyes. And she is doing so beautifully. She's like the head of so many things. She's teaching, making lots of money. And she is, I call her, the light, because she is. But that I saw right away because it was her soul. She was too addicted to the identity of being an addict. And it was so much more than that. So stories like that, when I see what they're doing today, they don't even look like addicts. They can't even bring that up on the apps. It's over. It's done. It's like ancient history. So there's just so many stories. And plus, where I work with a team. Right? I work with a team and we do brain spotting and EMDR and, a little bit of psychotherapy and hypnotherapy and acupuncture. And, it's like a full system. So we'll get you from every end, every angle.
Now, you also help people with relationships too. And one of the things that I love.
That's a whole thing. I'm sorry.
That is a whole thing.
Doesn't it always come down to relationships?
It does. But the thing that I love that you say is it 1 + 1 = 1.
Absolutely.
And this is it. A lot of people go into a relationship and they're like, no, half of me belongs to you and vice versa. And I'm like, no. You've got to be a whole person yourself and own your identity, because a lot of people go into a relationship and they become someone else.
Yes.
How do you help people with that?
Well, it's about the issue. Let's say you have a donut hole from childhood and you're trying to fill it up from the outside world, fame, fortune, money, relationship. And then you find out, well, that didn't work, right?
Mm.
The person may have left you, or, you have to fill that donut hole, which is the soul piece, all by yourself, right?
And how do you do
become
that?
the one.
Yeah.
By knowing where it is you lost yourself. Like you were saying in the car, you had that experience. Well, there is always a point where we lose ourselves, where we just really, sometimes in trauma, we decide we're not going to make it, so we leave our body, right? Or we have a narcissistic mother or father and we say, we're not going to make it out of this, so I better become number two and take care of them. There is always a point of the soul, and if you could track it where you did that, and you go back and you make another decision, you could begin to heal. So in relationships, you got to see what your needs are. What do you need in another person? That's dangerous, right? Because then if they leave you, you want to die. So you have to become married to yourself. And if you're married to yourself and you're the one with yourself, then somebody comes as like ice cream on the cake.
Yeah.
You don't need them, right? And there won't be a love addiction because you have yourself. And that's why I'm, been writing this book about the fast track to relationships. It's like a system. Do this, do this, do this, and then you'll have it. So I've helped a lot of people find their soulmates. That's like the most fun thing to do.
That's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking of, I had this client, I helped her through a divorce, and then she met somebody and I said, okay, here we go. He is exactly the same. You go and cute and all this. You can end this right now. Don't even bother going through this because it's the same. You know it. I know it. Just end it right now. Courageously end it. She did. And then the next week, she went on a plane and she met her soulmate.
Wow.
And she's with him now. Still, years later. So there it is, like the pattern, right? What are we repeating? Even though they may look different. So you got to get it at the root of the pattern. Otherwise, you'll just go through the same thing, right?
And really, like when we look at whether it be trauma, addiction, relationships, any of those things, it all comes back to the soul and healing that to get to the next level, right?
Karmically too. Oh, I'm so sorry. You get me so excited by what you said. But karmically, it from a higher level, like if you're on a carpet and you're looking down, right? A higher level. What did you set up in Earth School to learn? What classes did you sign up for? Right? So we play parts for each other. All the world's a stage, right? And all the men and women merely players. And so if we can understand it karmically, how we set it up because we need to transform it, then it comes down to the karmic piece, right? You don't want to repeat it. Let's say you had a regret in a past life. Let's say you don't like what you did. So you'll set it up again to come to that same point. So you'll do something different. That's what we do.
So do you, for people to find, that karmic past and what's happened in a former life, because I've actually been through some of like the past and future life regression stuff as well. Do you go through any of that kind of stuff for them to actually get deep enough to understand like what happened in a past life?
That's such a great question. This is where my New York comes in. I could always rely on my New York upbringing because it's there in your life. Your karma is so easy to find. It's great. You can go to someone who can read you, right? Help you, tell you, but you can really find it yourself. All you have to do is track where you end up with people in the pain. And there it is. What do you say? Like sometimes you can draw a wheel, and you could put people in your relationship that feel the same. You could put yourself in the middle of the wheel and see what you tell all of them. Please listen to me. Please love me. Whatever that is, that's your karma. And that's the fast track. When you go, oh my God, this feels the same. This feels so familiar. I've been here before. That's karma.
Yeah.
That's real life. And you can always find it in real life, right?
I can relate to that. And I repeated that pattern for many years, and then I went, okay, this now stops.
Yes, you see, we all know it through just what we experience. But sometimes it's good to get a read and tell someone. They'll go like, oh, something happened to you with water. What is that? They'll say, oh my God, I hate boats, and you could sort of do it together and help figure it out. But it's fascinating.
Absolutely fascinating. And, being in LA, you would work with a lot of celebrities, which would keep you on your toes. I mean, what kind of...
Yeah, a subject we could talk about for hours.
I think that's a whole other podcast, but, I'm sure you've got some funny stories to tell from that realm as well.
Yeah, through the years, I work in expensive rehab. I've met a lot of them. I guess what I have said and what I will say that's very humbling is that we all suffer the same.
Yep. And that's where our unity is in our struggle, isn't it? It's not about the fame, the fortune. We all are exactly the same.
It's unbelievable. And I'm working with a lot of businessmen, very rich men now, and all of the fame and all that fortune, but staying in your head and being so rational has not served these guys. And so now they're looking for the inner peace. They have the money and they're like, how do they find the inner peace? So it's really interesting. We all end up at that place, right?
Yeah. And it's funny, when you were talking about being on your knees before, one of my first podcasts I ever did was called the State of You. And it was like my own therapy. And in the first episode, I tell my story. And I was telling all these things that had gone wrong in my life, almost exactly all at the same time. And I thought to myself, why am I doing this? And I just sat there and I listened, as I said, I sat there and I listened and I waited for the answer. And the answer that I got was that it's not about the fall. It's about getting back up again. And that was the answer I got. And I've been doing that ever since.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
The line of transformation.
Yeah.
Getting through that other place and then living in the light, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you live in the light, you're in a special club, right?
Yep.
Because you're protected. And things come to you and you could let go and you could surrender. So many people try to do it all on their own. Why is that? There's help. There's help.
And I guess shame plays a big part for a lot of people as well. But,
Yes.
we know nothing grows in the dark, does it?
Exactly. You bring up a good point about shame, because with addiction, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
The shame and the guilt. It is because of how we're raised with religion. Right?
Yeah.
It really is. It's an indoctrination into shame and guilt. The spiritual opposite of that is that we're the light and we pay the debt fast and we move on. And it's not about holding eternal guilt for all time. So spiritual values and tools and ideas and concepts is about the burning fire, right? People say, well, I have my issues. Well, how long have you had your issues? When are we going to discard them into the fire?
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like a badge that they hold, isn't it?
Yes. And it's been called the benefit of the wound because you get something for it. People won't expect so much from you. You get to be a victim. You get to take it a little easier. And so around the trauma is the behavior, right? It's something to look at.
Yeah.
How long do you need to work on your issues?
Yeah. And like you say, is you deal with it and you move on, right?
Right. You put it in a box. You definitely take time to blame everyone, do whatever you got to do, dissect it, however long you need it. But then there comes a time. There comes a time where we must discard it because, you have to have new belief systems. And you have to live in enlightenment, meant for light.
Yeah.
We are here. We are here to evolve.
Exactly. And that's exactly what this show is all about, Audrey. Look, I reckon I could talk to you all day, and I'm hoping one day we do get a chance to do that. But for those people who have been as fascinated as I am in you, can you tell us where they can go to get in touch with you and find out more?
First of all, that's so kind of you. It touches me deeply that you said that, so I'm very grateful. AudreyHope.com. And also on Instagram, at the Audrey Hope.
Beautiful.
So, yeah. And they could also email me at audrey@audreyhope.com.
Brilliant. Now, last big question for you, Audrey. What's the change you'd like to see in the world and how can we bring it to life?
Can I take a moment with that question? Because I'm actively on my knees about that one. We need to enlighten people. And if we have to do it one person at a time, then that's the way it's going to have to go down. We have to heal the people in the world to be able to become their own selves and never follow like sheep. Right? And that comes from real healing. Why did you give your power away to a system, to a religion, to a cult, to a belief system? Why? And then we need to look at it from the level of healing. And I think when we heal, we'll be able to get back into our power and bring this world to a new evolution. And you know that this is an amazing opportunity. Where we stumble, there lies our treasure. So we have lots of opportunity. Everyone's invited. It's time now. Everything's out in the open. We see the crap. We see what needs to be looked at. And now it's time to do something about it.
Absolutely. Audrey, what a blessing you are. Thank you so much for being a part of the Ethical Evolution.
Thank you for having the Ethical Evolution.
Thanks for listening to the Ethical Evolution podcast. If you're ready to be the change and would love to work with me on finding your voice through spiritual coaching or creating your own podcast with impact, visit ethicalchangeagency.com.
Step inside the marketing mirror to uncover marketing secrets, discover gems, tactics, lessons, and campaigns you can use, next gen or fundamentals. Grab the marketing magic to improve your marketing and win more business.
Electricast.
Are you a fan of classic cinema or a young person who wants to discover the best films of all time? Do these legendary movies still hold up?
On the Generation Film podcast, two guys who grew up when movies dominated the culture share a great film with a panel of young movie lovers and see how it plays for today's generation.
We discuss changes in storytelling styles, representation,
The making of each film, its initial reception, and how its meaning has changed over the years.
Join us as we explore cinema classics across generations on Generation Film.
Electricast. Electricast.